Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Extension and Development Studies, SOEDS, Master's Degree Programs, Master of Arts in Extension and Development Studies, MAEDS, MEDS001 Introduction to Extension and Development, Block-1 Extension Education, Unit-1 Extension Education, an overview.
1. Introduction. Extension is a diverse, valuable and relatively new operational concept in India. The need for work in this area of subject matter has grown out due to the increased contribution and scope of extension in different subsectors of development work. The process of extension appears to be the best method for inducing people to help themselves, using their own resources to the maximum and government aid to the minimum, in the process of development. Extension discipline attracts, first, those who want to go on to become professional extension workers, second, those who need or want to understand a portion of extension education as part of their regular training in other fields, and, third, those who just want to study an interesting subject. We, the extension and development professionals, mostly fall under second category, i.e., we need to understand extension education in order to implement better development programs. Further, the extension concept and its applications are well known to researchers, teachers and functionaries working in agriculture and allied sciences. But the meaning, concept, importance, and application of extension principles are not well understood by the wider sections of people in other sectors of development. Therefore, the purpose of this unit is to make you understand these issues so that you can carry out extension work in different sectors of development. After studying this unit, you should be able to discuss its history, meaning, components, objectives, and functions of extension. Describe the principles and process of extension education, and explain the interrelationship between extension and development. 1.2 The story of extension. The term extension has its origin in the Latin word, tensure, meaning, stretching, and ex, meaning out. The literal meaning of extension is stretching out. Extension is education and its purpose is to change the attitude and practices of people with whom the work is done. The common use of the term, university extension, was first recorded in the 1840s, in Britain. The first practical steps were taken in 1867-68 when James Stewart, Fellow of Trinity College, Cambridge, gave lectures to women's associations and working men's clubs in the north of England. James Stewart is often considered the father of university extension. In 1871, Stewart approached the authorities in Cambridge University to organize centers for extension lectures under the university's supervision. Cambridge formally adopted the system in 1873 and was followed by London University in 1876 and Oxford University in 1878. By the 1880s, the work was being referred to as the extension movement. In this movement, the university extended its work in those beyond the campus. The growth and success of extension work in Britain influenced the initiation of similar activity elsewhere, especially in the United States. There, in many states, comparable out-of-college lectures were becoming established by the 1890s. Later, the extramural work of the land-grant colleges, concerned with serving the needs of farm families, was to expand dramatically and become formally organized. But the use of the term, extension, continued and has persisted as the designation for this work. All these activities indicate that the target group for university teaching should not be restricted to students on campus, but should be extended to people living elsewhere. Extension may be seen as a form of adult education, in which the teachers are staff members of the university. For many years, this was mainly an activity of the College of Agriculture, which employed county extension agents all over the state. Later, extension agents started serving other subsectors of development in addition to agriculture and allied activities. In India, the university extension gained momentum with the establishment of the state agricultural universities, SAUs, on the pattern of land-grant colleges. In the US, the first SAW was established in Pantnagar in 1960, and, as on 2010, there are now 45 SAUs in the country. These universities have the statewide responsibility for extension education and have integrated teaching, research, and extension at all levels, i.e., individual, department, college, and university. The University Grants Commission of India has recognized extension as the third dimension, equivalent to teaching and research, in its landmark policy framework of 1977. With this policy, extension has emerged as third major function of universities in general, and of agricultural universities in particular. This policy framework also led to the establishment of departments or centers of adult and continuing education and extension in general universities. On Sir Neil N. lines, IGNOU has also started the Center for Extension Education, and the School of Extension and Development Studies. 1.3 The meaning of extension. Extension education is an applied science consisting of content derived from research, accumulated field experiences, and relevant principles drawn from the behavioral science synthesized with useful technology into a body of philosophy, principles, content, and methods focused on the problems of out-of-school education for adults and youth. J.P. Liggins, 1961. Extension education is the process of teaching rural people how to live better by learning ways that improve their farm, home and community institutions. J.P. Liggins, 1961. Extension work is an out-of-school system of education in which adult and young people learn by doing with partnership between the government and the people, which provides service and education designed to meet the people within fundamental objective of development of the people. Kelsey and Hertel, I. 963. Extension is a program and a process of helping village people to help themselves, increase their production and to raise their general standard of living. D. Ensninger, 1961. Extension is the increased dissemination of useful knowledge for improving rural life. H. W. Butt, 1961. Extension education is defined as an educational process to provide knowledge to the rural people about the improved practices in a convincing manner and help them to take decision within their specific local conditions. 0. Z. Daharna, 1973. Extension involves the conscious use of communication of information to help people form sound opinions and make good decisions. Van den Ban and Hawkins. 2002. Extension education, common elements. Is an intervention. Is an educational process. Is a communication intervention. Intends to induce voluntary change in behavior. Focuses on a number of target processes and outcomes. Has an altruistic orientation. Has a technological, research, and professional dimension. You may notice some similarities as well as differences of opinion about the meaning of extension in the above definitions. Probably, one or more of the following questions may come to your mind after understanding the above definitions. Is extension concerned only with information communication and formation of opinion, or with the formation of decision making also in the process of development? Should extension aim at increasing knowledge only, or should it also help to identify development problems, and to clarify goals to attain development? All development organizations pay attention to some or all of the above aspects in their extension efforts. From the above discussion, it can be concluded that extension is an education and it is aimed at bringing a desirable change in behavior, knowledge, skills and attitudes of people so as to involve them actively in the process of development. Extension has now developed into a full-fledged discipline, having its own philosophy, objectives, principles, methods, and techniques which must be understood by every development worker and others connected with development. It may, however, be mentioned here that when extension is put into action for educating the people, it does not remain formal education. In that sense, there are several differences between the two by nature. Table 1, L. Table 1.1. Differences between formal and extension education. Formal education, extension education. Starts with theory and works up to practice, starts with practices and may take up theory I. Later on, students study subjects, people study problems. Fixed curriculum offered, no fixed curriculum or course of study and people help to formulate the curriculum. Authority rests with the teacher, authority rests with the people. Attendance is compulsory, participation is voluntary. Teacher instructs the students, extension worker teaches and also learns from the people. Teaching is only through instructors, teaching is also through local leaders. Teaching is mainly vertical, teaching is mainly horizontal. More or less homogeneous audience, heterogeneous audience. Rigid, flexible, pre-planned and pre-decided programs. Freedom to develop programs locally, based on the development needs and expressed desires of the stakeholders of development. More theoretical, more practical and intended for immediate application in the solution of problems. 1.4 The components of extension. In the context of development, extension has the following three broad components. Extension education, extension service, black circle extension work. 1.4.1 Extension education. Extension education is basically a need-oriented, local resource-based, problem-solution-oriented system, and is interrelated with education and research. Here, the extension efforts are related to research both in terms of its products, viz., new technology and processes. The extension education role is generally performed by higher learning institutions, viz., research institutes, universities, and apex-level training and extension organizations. 1.4.2 Extension service. Extension service is the mission and mandate of Development Department in all the states. Extension service is a program for development employing the extension process as a means for implementation. Extension service is location-specific, input-intensive, service-oriented, and field-level professional activity with two objectives. 1. Transferring new technologies or innovations, and advising the people on improved methods, and 2. Communicating development constraints to research institutes, development organization, policy makers, as feedback for participatory technology development. Thus, extension service serves as a link between researchers, development workers, and people. Extension service also works hand in hand with other development departments and input agencies to multiply their efforts and effects. 1.4.3 Extension work. Extension work is to assist people through educational and service approach. Through extension work, people are stimulated to make changes that result in more efficient production and marketing, conservation of natural resources, improved livelihood security, health, and more satisfying family and community life. Extension work is at the lowest in hierarchy, but extremely broad-based in usage. It is also extremely location-specific and usually susceptible to outside criticism. Extension work is to help people to help themselves. For example, many times, people demand that local extension workers do various works. Unless the people are also taught to do these things themselves or involve them in those works, it is not extension education but simply a service. Example: conservation of forest SL trees by extension workers vs. community forest management by Vana Sanrekihana Salnatis. 1.5 The philosophy, objectives, functions, and scope of extension. 1. 51 Philosophy of extension. According to Mildred Horton, the principles of extension philosophy are: the individual is supreme in a democracy. The home is the fundamental unit in a civilization. The family is the first training group of the human race. The foundation of any permanent civilization must rest on the partnership of man and land, nature. According to Ensminger, extension philosophy is changing attitudes, knowledge and skills of the people. Working with men and women, young people, boys and girls to answer their needs and wants. Helping people to help themselves. Learning by doing, and seeing is believing. Development of individuals, their leaders, their society, and their world as a whole. Working in harmony with the culture of the people. A two-way channel. A continuous educational process. 1.5.2 Objectives. The literal meaning of the term, objectives, is the expressions of the ends towards which our efforts are to be directed. In other words, an objective means a direction of movement. Before starting any development program, you should clearly understand the objectives of extension so that you know what to do, where to go, and what is to be achieved. In the context of development, the fundamental objective of extension is to stimulate desirable development. Fundamentals objectives of extension. In the context of development, the fundamentals objective of extension is to stimulate desirable development. However, the role that extension plays in development depends on how one defines extension. By applying the definitions given in the above section, we may arrive at a concept of extension that seems to synthesize diverse perspectives of development into 5 objectives. 1. Transferring knowledge from researchers to people end users. 2. Advising people in their decision making. 3. Educating people, he able to make similar decisions in future. 4. Enabling people to clarify their own goals and possibilities and to realize them. 5. Stimulating desirable developments within the framework of the national, economic and social policies involving all the subsectors of development as a whole. 1.5.3 Functions. The extension system includes all public, private, and non-government development institutions that transfer, mobilize, and educate people, as distinct from a service or a single institution that, traditionally, provides advice only. After reviewing a number of efforts to define or characterize extension, it is helpful to see extension as both a system and the set of functions performed by that system to induce voluntary change among people for development. A set of functions of extension includes transferring technology in multiple directions for sustainable development, transferring management to mobilize and organize developmental activities by all communities, transferring capacity to educate, build human resources and capacity building of all stakeholders, market intelligence, management, and in negotiating financial, input, and market services. 1.5.4 Scope. The dictionary meaning of scope is space for action. The scope of extension is mostly dealing with the problems concerning development programs. It teaches people how to do something and to work out ways and means to satisfy their own felt needs. It teaches people how to recognize and solve problems of development. It is an education of action in groups and masses, within a democratic framework of society. It emphasizes the change of mental outlook of the people and instills in them ambition of higher standards of development, and the will and determination to work for such standards. So, in short, the scope of extension is to enable the people to have high standards of development, so as to reach high living standards of their own lives. Scope of extension. The scope of extension is to enable the people to have high standard of development so as to reach high living standards of their own lives. 1.6 Principles of extension. Extension work is based upon some working principles and process, and the knowledge of the following principles is necessary for an extension and development professional. 1. Principle of interest and need. Extension work must be based on the needs and interests of the people. These needs and interests differ from individual to individual, from village to village, from block to block, from state to state, and therefore, there cannot be one development program for all people. 2. Principle of cultural difference. Extension work is based on the cultural background of the people with whom the work is done. Improvement can only begin from the level of the people where they are. This means that the extension worker has to know the level of the knowledge and the skills of the people, methods, and tools used by them, their customs, traditions, beliefs, values, etc., before starting the extension program. 3. Principle of participation. Extension helps people to help themselves. Good extension work is directed towards assisting people to work out their own problems, rather than giving them ready-made solutions. Actual participation and the experience of people in these programs creates self-confidence in them, and they learn more by doing. 4. Principle of adaptability. People differ from each other, one group differs from another group, and conditions also differ from place to place. Therefore, extension programs should be flexible, so that necessary changes can be made whenever needed, to meet varying conditions. 5. The grassroots principle of organization. Any development program should fit in with the local conditions. The aim of organizing a local group is to demonstrate the value of the new practices or programs so that more and more people participate. 6. The leadership principle. Extension work is based on the full utilization of local leadership. The selection and training of local leaders to enable them to help to carry out extension work is essential to the success of the development program. People, especially in rural areas, have more faith in local leaders, and they should be used to put across a new developmental idea so that it is accepted with the least resistance. 7. The whole family principle. Extension work will have a better chance of success if the extension workers have a whole family approach instead of piecemeal approach or separate approach. Extension work is therefore for the whole family, i.e., for adults and the youth. 8. Principle of cooperation. Extension is a cooperative venture. It is a joint democratic enterprise in which people cooperate with their village, BIC, and state officials to pursue a common development cause. 9. Principle of satisfaction. You may be aware of the saying that, a satisfied customer is the best advertisement. The end product of the effort of extension teaching is the satisfaction that comes to the people and their family members as the result of solving a problem, meeting a need, acquiring a new skill, or some other changes in behavior. Satisfaction is the key to success in extension work. 10. The evaluation principle. Extension is based upon the scientific methods of development, and it needs constant evaluation. The effectiveness of the work is measured in terms of the changes brought about in the knowledge, skill, attitude, and adaptation behavior of the people, but not merely in terms of achievement of physical targets. 11. Principle of democratic approach. Extension education is based upon the democratic principle of discussions and suggestions. Participation of people in extension activities is voluntary and development interventions are carried out based on the perceived needs of the people. 1.7 Process of extension. The process of extension, as applied to development programs, involves 5 essential phases. Fig. 1 SHOs vs the sequence of steps that result in progress from a given situation to a new or a more desirable one. 1. Analyzing the situation. This requires a large amount of facts about all aspects of the situation where extension work is to be taken up. Information is needed about the people's interests, education, their needs, social customs, farming systems, water bodies, etc. These details can be obtained by conducting participatory rural appraisal, rapid rural appraisal, and these details help in identifying suitable developmental program to the problems. Look at the screen. Figure 1.1, Steps in the Extension Process, Legans, 1961. 2. Objectives or goals to be accomplished, the beneficiaries of development. Programs must be involved in selecting a limited number of objectives which should state the behavioral changes in people as well as the economic or social outcomes desired. 3. Teaching. Teaching is the process of arranging situations in which the things to be learnt are brought to the notice of the people, their interest is developed, and a desire for change is aroused, i.e., they are stimulated to action. The essential role of an extension worker is to create effective ironing situations with the following essential elements. 1. Instructor, extension worker like you. 2. Learners, all stakeholders of development programs. 3. Subject matter, planned developmental activity. Examples: participatory, irrigation management, community forest management, mineral mixture, feeding to livestock, etc. 4. On participatory irrigation management, teaching materials, flannel board, blackboard, charts, models, samples, slides, film show, etc. 5. Physical facilities, sitting accommodation, good visibility, etc. Teaching participatory irrigation management. If we want to teach the farmers about the use and advantages of participatory irrigation management, we need to do this by conducting demonstrations under a canal area, showing them what the participatory irrigation management is, explaining its advantages and comparing it with other methods. After seeing the beneficial effect, the farmers are convinced and motivated to action and start voluntary participation in irrigation water management. 4. Evaluating the teaching. Evaluation is to determining the extent to which the objectives have been reached. Plans for evaluation should be built into the plans of work during earlier phases. Remember, a distinction should be made from mere records of accomplishments from original objectives stated. 5. Reconsidering. This step consists of a review of previous efforts and results which reveal a new situation. If this new situation shows the need for further work, then the whole process may begin again, with new or modified objectives. These steps are intended only to clarify the necessary actions in carrying out a planned extension educational effort. It does not imply that these steps are definitely separate from each other. Several experiences tell us that planning, teaching, and evaluation take place continuously in varying degrees throughout all phases of the extension process. 1.8 Extension and development. Development is not a matter of only plans, targets, budgets, technology, experts, and organizations to govern them. Rather, it is an effective use of all these mechanisms as educational means for changing the mind and actions of people in such ways that they help themselves to attain development. Emerging from the acceptance of this idea is the concept of extension education to show and find the ways to help people. In this context, extension is one of working with people, not for them, of helping them become self-reliant, not dependent on others, of making them the central actors in the development, not spectators. In short, the essence of extension process is helping people by means of education to put useful development knowledge to work for them. The ultimate goal of extension is to develop the people by improving their standard of living through education and voluntary participation in extension programs. In this context, it is imperative to understand the concept of development, its varied dimensions and their relation to extension. Development vs. extension. Development is not a matter of only plans, targets, budgets, technology, experts, and organizations to govern them. Rather, it is an effective use of all these mechanisms as educational means for changing the mind and actions of people in such ways that they help themselves to attain development. Extension is one of working with people, not for them, of helping them become self-reliant, not dependent on others, of making them the central actors in the development, not spectators. Development means development of men, the satisfaction of their basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, and access to safe drinking water, sanitation, public transport, health, and educational facilities. Underdevelopment means denial of basic needs to people while enhancing the material returns to the dominant groups. Development will necessarily involve the use of socio-cultural, financial, political, and human resources facilitated by extension. Human, personal, development. Development in any meaningful sense must begin with, and within the individuals. Unless motivation comes from within, efforts to promote change by extension workers will not be sustainable by the individual. The individual will remain under the power of others. In this context, human development is the process by which an individual develops self-respect and becomes more self-confident, self-reliant, cooperative, and tolerant of others through becoming aware of his shortcomings as well as his potential for positive changes. Economic development. This is a process by which people, through their own, and/or, efforts with the help of extension agents boost production for direct consumption and have a surplus to sell for cash. Figure 1.2, Extension and Development. Look at the screen. Political development. If development is to truly benefit the people, then the political structure must be responsive to their needs and aspirations as well as protect their rights and their property. The people have to acquire political power in order to participate in decision-making at local level and to choose their own leaders. Plan and share power democratically. Create and allocate communal resources equitably and efficiently among individual groups. Extension workers' feedback on developmental issues or problems is important to influence policymakers in making suitable developmental policies. Social and cultural development. It refers to those investments and services carried out, or provided by, extension agents for the benefit of the people and communities, whether as a village, a district, or a nation. These services include health, education, water, energy, transport, communication, etc. 1.9 Summary. In this unit we started by looking at the meaning, components, objectives, and functions of extension education and understood that development is not a matter of only plans, targets, budgets, technology, experts, and organizations to govern them. Rather, it is an effective use of all these mechanisms as educational means for changing the mind and actions of people in such ways that they help themselves. We also examined the key principles and processes of extension and realized that knowledge of these is necessary for any development professional. At the end, we discussed the interrelationship between extension and development and concluded that extension is the process and development is the outcome of the extension process. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.